On June 8th, the USS Liberty, America's most sophisticated intelligence ship in 1967, was attacked by Israeli air and naval forces in international waters, 13 miles off of El Arish in Sinai. 34 Americans were killed. 172 were wounded. The Israeli and American governments pronounced the attack as a case of mistaken identity. Now, we are going to show you what really happened. The survivors of the 294-man crew of the USS Liberty will tell you their story.
This film should shock decent Americans. Above all, men and women who served in America's armed forces. It will shock particularly as it was an attack not by terrorists implacably opposed to the United States, as is the case of the USS Cole.
The Liberty is the most decorated ship in the history of the United States Navy. 840 medals, including the Medal of Honor for her skipper, the Presidential Unit Citation for her crew, 2 Navy Crosses, 11 Silver Stars, and 204 Purple Hearts.
The day before, I was topside when Israeli planes came by, and very close where we could wave to the pilots, and they were that close where we could wave back.
It was a very clear day. It was a warm day. Sunshine was shining brightly out. Nice breeze blowing, and I distinctly remember hearing the flag flapping in the wind.
I was coming to go back to the Trescom area, and I stepped out on deck. That plane came by and looked right in the cockpit. If you waved, I waved. That's how close they were, and they knew who we were.
Well, all the recon flights that they had that morning, looking at our ship for approximately 6 to 7 hours, they had a good idea of what they were doing, and they hit us hard and fast with everything they had.
Commander William McGonigal, the ship's captain, although he had been badly wounded, most of his bridge crew had been killed, he stayed on the bridge throughout the attack and the long night that followed. Admired and respected by his crew, he received the Congressional Medal of Honor for gallantry.
When the plane struck, it was without provocation and certainly unexpected. And they seemed to descend on us from all directions at the same time. Those rockets and machine guns tore the ship. It killed men on deck. And we were defenseless.
I was topside, fighting fires and doing other damage control work throughout the duration of the attack. At the same time, I was able to observe the jets flying overhead, and I also observed the American flag flying from the mast. At no time did that flag hang limp from the mast.
I was one of the 2 signalmen on the USS Liberty when the ship was attacked, and my only job during the attack was to make sure that the flag was flying, so every few minutes I would walk out at the signal bridge up at the mast.
And despite the fact that some Israeli pilots actually had a conscience and later admitted to knowing full well that it was an American ship that they were attacking, some, to this day, will still try to insist that it was a case of mistaken identity. And they will do so simply because these are fellow Jews. No other reason. And that's a smack in the face to the Jewish pilots who were brave enough to admit these things and face very harsh penalties for doing so. And that's insult upon injury to the brave men who were aboard this ship who were scheduled for execution. And only a miraculous chain of events saved their lives, because the Israelis had every intent to murder every last person on this ship, which you will soon see for yourselves.
That on the first pass they knocked out our ability to call for help. The one remaining antenna, which I had shut down because it had some problems in the tuner, is probably why it didn't get hit. I had to jury rig a coaxial cable directly from the transmitter to the antenna.
So we were working feverishly to try to get a signal out at that time, and then finally there was we were able to get a signal to the 6th Fleet, and then I was listening or monitoring that communications, and they said that they would be sending aircraft, and so at that point we just felt overjoyed that knowing that there was going to be aircraft coming to our rescue.
The initial strike by the planes on the ship come out 5 minutes after 2 in the afternoon of 8 June. And the attack lasted about 20 minutes. The ship was fired at from port to starboard, starboard to port, stem to stern, and there was not a single compartment above the waterline that did not have one or more direct penetration by a rocket, machine gun, and they also dropped napalm on the bridge of the ship.
At 2:35 p.m., Defense Secretary Robert McNamara recalled the 12 Navy fighters that had been sent to our defense by the carrier Saratoga. At that time, no one aboard the Liberty had identified the attacking Israelis. It was 1.5 hours later that our embassy in Israel first told Washington that Israelis had attacked a ship, possibly a U.S. Navy ship. How then did McNamara know to recall the help sent to defend the Liberty?
The aircraft take pictures as they fire their guns. These are used for analysis of their tactics, and these are used for confirmation of the damage that they've done. These pictures have never been publicly presented.
Lieutenant Ennis was sitting on the deck, and there was blood coming out of his mouth, and his knee he had an injury in his knee, and there was blood coming out of it. That cough had got blown off, I think the 04 level, but I come across him, and he was just peppered from head to toe with shrapnel. And I covered him up with a blanket.
My brother, he was sent to on the bridge of the ship to find out what was who the planes were, where they came from. They had no markings. That's against the Geneva Rules of War right there. He received a Silver Star for his efforts. He was cut down by the planes.
The captain, initially after the attack, sustaining shrapnel wounds in his knee, and somebody put a tourniquet around his leg, and I got coffee. I think about 5 cups of coffee went down the captain to keep him going. It was impressive because with all the blood loss and everything, he was going all night long.
A short time after the air attack had been completed, the 3 torpedo boats approached us from our starboard quarter at high speed and in an apparent torpedo launch attitude.
The 3 Israeli torpedo boats fired 6 torpedoes at the Liberty. Because of Captain McGonagall's handling of the ship, 5 missed. Intelligence base was destroyed. 25 American sailors died almost instantly.
This hole in the side was in excess of 40 feet in diameter. You could put your whole house in that hole. And we were right in the middle of it.
We couldn't believe what we saw. You couldn't walk around that part of the deck without stepping on a piece of someone. In fact, Phil Turney and myself had found a shoe with a foot still in it.
I do remember the alarm to stand by to abandon ship. Don't believe your station yet. They were preparing to, and then that was called off because apparently the life rafts had been shot up. So if you went in the water, you were on your own, and the list on the ship was considerable. You could tell it looked like at first we were going to maybe roll over.
The lights went out and the ship rolled over, and I figured, well, it's the end.
The torpedo had hit the side of the ship, of the room I just stepped out of, killed every man in my division that was in there. This fellow first class that I mentioned, he was on the phone at the time just outside the door. It took off the back of his head.
It broke my lower left leg, both bones, collapsed my lung, broke ribs, fractured my skull, blew out my eardrums.
We took the guy down below, and I don't know how many runs I made up and down, carrying wounded.
And I saw all the bodies laying there on the tables where Dr. Kiefer had been working on. I was told that he was in the officers' wardroom operating on more people.
34 were killed, another 172 were